Hello and welcome to another episode of the Show Me Mo podcast with your host, Joshua Peach. And this is episode 8. And I am excited for this one. This has been a work in progress for a little over a month now. I've met Salum, I guess in September, and we saw each other again at an event a couple months ago in Missouri. And I said, I got to have you on the podcast. You're just doing such amazing stuff at your district. I want to share it with our listeners. And so Salum Stutzer, independent schools currently. We'll talk about what your next thing is, but welcome to the Show Me Mo podcast, my friend.
Hey, Josh, pleasure to be here. I thoroughly enjoyed the few times we visited. I've also watched several of the other podcasts that you've done with our colleagues, and they've all been great. Each one has given me a little takeaway that I can implement here in our district and my future district. And so pleasure to be here. I'm excited to share with you as well.
Yeah, Massachusetts guy falling in love with all the great things going on in Missouri to the point of starting a podcast, and just any chance I get, just going to soak in the energy that you guys have is it's been amazing. And you, my friend, are nothing short of extraordinary based on how you're showing not just the work you're doing, but how you're showing it. And I want to talk about that part too, the importance of showing your work. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about the landscape, about the district, number of students, little facts that people might not know about, and a little bit about you and how you got here. One of the things that I always ask facility professionals is, what was the day that the light bulb went off that you said, I want to be a director of facilities in schools? Was it the first day of kindergarten? Was it the last day of high school, or sometime in between or after?
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and start with that. My background, I come from a household of educators. My mom, has been an educator most of her life, and my dad was an educator all of his life. And so naturally, I think all of us kind of started gearing that way. We see the value, as we all hear, education is one of the greatest equalizer, and I think I would argue the greatest equalizer in life, right? Mm-hmm. And I certainly wanted to be a part of that. But I knew my strengths were not in the classroom. My strengths were not teaching. So what were there other ways that I could be a part of the educational process? And, my strengths and skill sets were really oriented towards the operational side, providing, a conducive environment for learning to take place in. So professionally, I went to college, went to a small liberal arts called Central Methodist University here in mid-Missouri. It's about 20 minutes northwest of Columbia. And I was a student athlete there. And my intentions were to go there, get my degree and get out, right? But as with many things in life, I had some mentors along the way going into my senior year, said, you've got some skills that we could really utilize here once you graduate. And so they talked to me about entry-level student affairs. So I became a resident hall director after I graduated, and I served in that role for a couple of years and really grew. And you learn a lot in that. In that role. I had a building of probably 400 or 500 students, and obviously they lived there for the most part year round. So we're providing services 24/7, making sure they're obviously safe, they're well taken care of from, being fed. But a part of that is also, at that time, many institutions were moving to, living learning environments, right? So you had certain floors that focused on, strategic areas. And so that was all my responsibility to ensure that we provided an atmosphere for them to be successful in all those areas. So I quickly rose through the ranks. So I served as a hall director for a couple of years, and then I was promoted to a director of residence life and I served in that role for approximately 3 to 4 years, finally kind of elevating to assistant / associate dean of students for the university. And each step along the way, I grew in responsibilities, right? So I went from just the housing piece to housing, as well as, meal service, and making sure that those buildings were well maintained. So working collaboratively with all of our other stakeholders, specifically in the plant operations area, and then just continue to grow from there to provide comprehensive student services in my role as associate dean. So I did that at Central Methodist for a total time lapse of about 9 years. And then in 2014, I had the opportunity to move back to the Kansas City area and join the team over at Shawnee Mission Public Schools, which is the third largest school district in the state of Kansas, with an enrollment of about 25,000 students. They had gone through a superintendent change, and he was building out his team. And then obviously there's layers from there. I knew some folks that were a part of that new superintendent's cabinet. And so I went to work for a gentleman by the name of Bob Robinson, who was a mentor of mine, kind of going up through, I'm a product of the independent school district. I'm not sure if I shared that. So as I was going through school, high school, that is, I worked for the district in summer capacity, seasonal, like paint crew, grounds crew. And so that's where I knew Bob Robinson, because he used to serve as the director of facilities for the independent school district. So then he retired from Missouri, went over to Kansas, and served on, who was Jim Henson, the superintendent, served on his cabinet. So Bob was trying to fill out his team. And so I went over, and he had reached out to me kind of around November of 2014, and said, hey, we've got a lot of good work that's getting ready to take place here, and I'm building out my team. Would you consider joining? So sure enough, I joined. I had kind of what I would call the 9/10 year itch. I'd accomplished everything that I needed to do or wanted to do professionally at Central Methodist, and this was that next opportunity for me to grow professionally. So I went over to Shawnee Mission as a operations supervisor, predominantly seeing the custodial operations, which was a staff of about 250 custodians throughout the district. And little did Bob not share with me that one of the things that we were going to be doing was going through a restructure. And so my first really 6 months on the job were spent restructuring the entire custodial department for efficiencies. They had a model where everything was by building, and we were moving to kind of more of a centralized model. And so as a part of that, obviously there's reduction of force. And so that was kind of a difficult time, but nonetheless, we made it. And I think things in the end ended up being really right sized for what the district needs were. So from there, I was hired had opportunity to go over to the Fort Osage School District, and was hired as the director of facilities. Obviously, an opportunity for me to continue my professional growth in the areas of operation. And I was there for a year before the superintendent of the independent school district, Dale Hurl, poached me, and that's where I've been since. So.
And well, it's one of those things that there's never been a larger need for facility professionals. I mean, there's a huge gap right now. And when you see great facility directors, it's good reason why they're coming and looking for.
I think to add to that too, Josh, I think more so now probably than any time before. When you're going to school, when I was going through school, high school and probably college, I think from the facility side, we all understand that now, but I think the respect and importance of the position has grown, especially, and was magnified, ironically, during COVID, right?
Right.
Think about what COVID did to, for all the things that we talk about COVID and, the negatives, I think there's a lot of positives that have come out with that. For example, in the operations of schools, I think, those district leaders realized how important sound operational practice from an indoor air quality, from a cleaning standpoint, not only was there value in that, it was the value was that was the key to being able to keeping schools open and mitigating, spread and continuing to maintain healthy environments for all stakeholders. So to your point, I think now when you sit around the table and visit with whether it's board members, whether it's superintendents, they know and understand the role that operations and facilities play more so than they ever have in their professional career. And with that responsibility kind of comes opportunities for us to work with them with different partnerships. Our organization here and the value that we bring from a consultation, a collaboration standpoint with many of the other state agencies, from the Department of Health and Human Services to the Center for Educational Safety. Our organization has done a good job, and that's kudos to our executive director, right, Charlie Branham. He's done a good job of realizing what opportunities exist and how our organization, with the skill sets and the diverse skill sets that we have with many people serving in various roles, can meet that need and fill that gap. And so to your point, I think globally, people are realizing the value of having good operational practice, because instruction, let's be honest, can't take place without those quality learning environments.
Right. Yeah, and I'm gonna toot Charlie's horn too, and when he listens to this, I think we're gonna sense that his head is expanding. But he really he and your board, you exemplify member first, and that's been what has drawn me. I got a lot of places to be and things to do, and like I say, anytime since last September that I get an invite to be a part of something, I'm all over it, because what I see in your organization, the MSPMA, Missouri School Plant Managers Association, is you truly are looking out for members first. That first of its kind winter workshop that I was able to moderate and bring in some thought leaders, for lack of a better word, to come in and for me to help with kind of directive of the conversation and making it really an engaging conversation where people could speak up and ask the questions. And it wasn't just death by PowerPoint of a whole bunch of information. Really exemplifies the great things and the innovation that Charlie and the board are doing for all your members, which is phenomenal. One of the interesting takeaways, I always love these episodes because I get to know people a little bit better, and I have to tell you, in my entire, now going on my 27th year career of working with schools and operations, you're the first person that I see you started your career unknowingly as an RARD in a college. And as you were telling that story, I'm going, man, that makes so much sense, because what people don't understand is that RA or RD looked at as me being not that smart. That responsibility when I was growing up or when I was going to visit colleges, because I went to community college. So my RA or my RD was my parents. So when I got to go see my friends that had dorms that they lived in, the RA or the RD was the babysitter to make sure that they knew where all the booze was being hidden and all that stuff. Yeah. But there's a lot more to that. Too hot, too cold, clogged toilet, anything that goes wrong. That's a pretty big responsibility. And you get to see the inner workings of how the communication process works and everything else. So that's pretty interesting. So congratulations on being the first.
No, I appreciate that. And it's interesting that, as you reflect kind of on your experience and I reflect on my experience, there's a lot, philosophically in terms of how I operate now, that at the base level was built when I was an RA and RD. I think in our line of work, and I would argue probably in professionally any line of work, success is built on relationships.
100%.
100%, right? And so as I look back, probably one of the biggest things that I learned was how to, in that environment, serving as an RA, RD, or director of Res Life, you have to be able to establish positive relationships, because the reality is those students won't seek help or assistance from you if they can't trust you or know that they have a relationship with you. And likewise, in our operational practice here and wherever else I've been professionally, it's tough to get people to understand your goals. They may understand them, but it's tough for them to execute your goals, your expectations, your vision, if they don't have a relationship with you, or they don't value that relationship that you've hopefully established with them. So at the core of really everything that we do, it's relationship based. You know, all the other stuff, it'll take place. Those are simply the variables that we have to work in, but relationship is the core.
Yeah. Yeah. No, when I actually got a client one year early on, and like, this is bringing back, it's kind of interesting, kind of the full circle, but I can remember being in my early 20s, just starting out in a school, saying that there were two kids that after the first week they dropped out of college because the living environment, not the learning environment, the living environment was not something that was that's something that they could handle, because it was unseasonably warm, and the heat was running, the thermostat was broken, and it was unlivable living. And so the school lost two tuitions, more importantly, two students that wanted to get an education. And when I'm listening to you and hearing about how you got started, I'm like, boom, there it is. That was that story that I heard, that the RA didn't do what they were supposed to do, which was report to the facility department what was going on in the building. And you're basically you're the director of, you're not the director of facilities, you might be the supervisor of facilities for that dormitory, but it's a lot more important than finding the beer that's hidden in the ceiling tile. There's a lot more to it, which is something that I think a lot of people overlook.
100%. And I think, to add to that as well, Josh, is, that environment operated 24/7, right? And so you may have a resident come to you at, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning saying, to your point, hey, I'm really hot, right? And uncomfortable. I've got a test tomorrow that I've got to take, I've got all this added stress. And so as the individual responsible for that building, you're trying to provide the best customer service to that student, because A, it matters. B, that's the lifeblood, right? Enrollment lifeblood for many higher ed institutions. So you can either sit on that till the morning, or you can go over and take a look and try to build your mechanical knowledge, which a lot of the mechanical knowledge I've built was during that time, right? So, hey, we've got a stuck actuator here. And so, hey, let's try to work on that and fix that and provide a high level of customer service. But I've also helped kind of our plan ops team not come in the next morning and have, a work order list of 600 rooms that they need to take a look at, and they only have so many resources. So it was twofold. I learned a lot, both operationally, but also just from the human element in terms of building relationships and bridging needs when needed.
Yeah, that is cool. And you've actually, I'm going to talk to you offline about an idea that I just had in my brain that I'm going to lean on you for, because going right back to it, there's not enough experienced facility professionals to take all the roles that are out there. And you've given me a great idea, and I've gotten way off topic, and I'm going to reel us back in, but this is good stuff. I mean, I could talk to you for a day about a lot of this stuff, but one of the things that I wanted to get on this podcast, I share, and I think you've probably heard me say this, is it's more important to show your work than to do your work today. A lot of the work that you do, most of the work that you do is behind a curtain. And if everything goes smoothly, then the building did a great job. The builders did a great job of building that building. It's not that the facility department was proactive and doing great preventive maintenance. It's not that they were doing a great job of staying on top of their capital needs. It's that the building was built right. And so showing that work, and there's a lot of aspects to showing that work. I obviously provide software solutions that help do that. Another aspect of showing that work and showcasing your team is the power of social media. And I think you've done a phenomenal job, specifically on LinkedIn, where you're educating your followers and the world to projects that your team is doing, to not solving the supply chain issues, but I saw you had one post that talked about, I think, 119 rooftop units, or there was something that you purchased a large number of in preparation for a project, not in line with the project because you knew the supply chain issue. So educating folks, hey, why do we have this, parking lot filled with all these units? You put it right out there and said, hey, we ordered all of this because the wait time was 362 days and we got 365 days to do it in. Really kind of neat stuff. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to understand, when you started to do that, because I've been following you for some time and it seems like you have been doing it for a while. What motivated you to do it? And then maybe talk about a couple of the projects. I'd love to learn more about the auditorium with all the scaffolding and all of that, because that just looks like just a ton of work being done. That scares me.
100%. Yeah. So let's start. Let's take a bite out of the HVAC project that we're currently doing. So this was really about, you're well aware that public and higher ed institutions had access to leverage a lot of their financial pieces through ESSER funding, which were specifically allocated for improvements to indoor air quality, because I think the federal government realized how important schools are and the role that they serve, and let's try to help our school system strengthen that to provide an optimum learning environment post-COVID, right? So we had access to probably about $10 million. Obviously, we had more, but as we worked with our leadership team, we decided that let's spend 10 million of our allocation to improve our indoor air quality, right? We already did great things, Josh. You're well aware, you know the name Luke Guard with Children's Mercy. And we've been doing indoor air quality testing here in our district probably the last 15, 20 years. We've specifically worked with them. And so with that, indoor air quality is not just about your mechanical systems, right? It boils down to what type of flooring are you putting down, what type of furniture, what type of cleaning chemicals are you utilizing. Some of that is also policy and planning development. One of our highest offenders of indoor air quality are our own staff, right? Bring in fragrances that have, high VOC content and all of that. So we've worked to strategically build a program on indoor air quality way before really many people were talking about it, right? But a part of that is also what we're doing with our mechanical systems. So I've got a condition assessment for every single rooftop unit that is in service in our district, really any mechanical system that's in service in our district. And so when we had access to those dollars, my thought process went to, hey, what can I do to improve? Obviously, efficiency and technology over the years has improved on those systems. And so just simple life cycle replacement will simply address many of the challenges that you have with your existing systems. And the second part of that is now I'm leveraging federal dollars, right? Instead of our own internal capital dollars that can be and most of the time are allocated to other needs. Leverage that to try to set up the district for future success for the next 10 years, right? Because I'm, with those dollars, I'm not going to be able, we're about 4 million square feet under roof. And so that's a lot of square footage to condition. And you've got, obviously, based off of life cycle, you've got units that have, been in service at intermittent, ranges. So I had about 120 20 rooftop units that I needed to replace because they were 2 to 3 years past their life cycle. But,
Yep.
you know, we've got a good preventative maintenance program to keep those units running, but we were on borrowed time. So we allocated, and then I had about another 12 boilers that were in the same boat. So obviously we were right at the heart of COVID. Lead times were crazy. And so for the most part, I was doing 1-for-1 replacements. So I engaged, let me know if it's okay to share.
Please don't, this is
I
everything.
engaged Daikin. I'm a big Daikin fan in terms of their systems. They bring good value, and our guys know and understand those systems, can work on them, and that's their preferred mechanical system. And so I engaged them and started having conversations of, hey, I'm looking at allocating these resources to outfitting and upgrading and life cycle replacement these number of systems. And so we built together, hey, no problem, we can certainly help you with that. So I said, all right, you know, go out and get all the serial numbers and everything else, model numbers. For the most part, I'm doing 1-for-1 replacement. I'd already gone through and had assessed, you know, are there any systems that are not right sized in terms of conditioning whatever space they're serving. And so I wasn't too concerned about that. We, you know, load and everything else checked all those boxes. So they put together, you know, a budget for me respective to equipment. And I wanted to really maximize those dollars, Josh. And as you know, when you put together a package and it's turnkey where you're including equipment and labor, you're going to pay a little bit more of a premium on that, because a lot of those, in this case, those mechanical contractors are going to include, you know, some additional dollars there just to leverage their risk, right?
Right.
And so I'd made the decision to, okay, I'm going to buy the equipment directly through Daikin, cut out the middleman respective to that, and try to, you know, leverage that. And it worked because I was able to reduce kind of the budgetary takeoff number by about 30-40%.
Wow.
Okay. And so I bought the equipment through Daikin, bought it almost a full year ahead of when we were going to start the project due to concerns about lead times. Because the other thing is, you know, schools for the most part, these are 20, you know, year round now, let's be honest.
Right.
There's really about what I would call a 60, maybe 70-day window max, depending on your school district, where you're not in session, right? But for the most part, between summer school and the regular academic year, we're for the most part year round. And so with that, I've only got basically 60 to 70 days, right, in the calendar year to perform this work at 22 school sites. So I've got to have my equipment in hand before I go tearing off existing equipment, because I've got to be able to provide, you know, a comfortable learning environment when it calls for that. So we worked through that, took that to the board. They approved me for, you know, but what ended up being about $3.9 million in equipment purchases. So that was to cover all the rooftop and units and boilers, and a couple of small chillers in there as well. And then I worked with our design teams, 2 firms, to put out, you know, all of the specifications to have all the mechanical contractors bid on the work. So through that process, I ended up with 3 highly qualified mechanical contractors in the Kansas City metro area, and every single one of them got large parts of the project. And I gave them the option to combo bid, but then I had them bid also by line item for the 22 school sites, because that provided me with the greatest flexibility to be able to pick and choose the lowest, most responsible, because I also drove the cost down. So just on bid day alone, between combo bids and if the district selected the individual line items, I was able to shave about another $200,000 off of the bids. And so that freed up and gave us some additional resources to where I could go out and buy some additional pieces of equipment to maximize those dollars that we had to utilize on this project. So pleased to say this last year, so I built the schedule for 2 consecutive summers.
Mhm.
So last summer, we focused on all the boilers as well as the ventilation system for our natatorium here. So we got all of that work done. And this summer, and we also got some other rooftop units, at a couple of, onesies, twosies that were completed last summer. So right now I sit at about 109 rooftop units to get installed. We just had a couple of meetings, a couple of Fridays ago. We're going to try to knock off several of them over spring break to bring that number down to roughly about 105 to 100, and then we'll finish the rest this summer. So it's a lot of, I'm really excited, and I've actually shared our model with several other folks out there, because we're all kind of, for the most part, in the same boat in the public sector, in terms of, we've got defined periods of time to be able to perform, capital projects work. And so I'm really proud with how that project's turned out. And really, before I leave, we'll have all those systems commissioned, working, ready for the upcoming academic school year. And, I've set it up to where we've got, in about another 8 years, we'll be ready for our next pod of equipment for life cycle replacement. So I've started kind of building some capital budget to be able to address that, because the leveraging of these federal dollars is going to sunset probably in 2023, 2024. They've given us an extension on that. So a lot of those needs are going to need to be brought back in-house. So it was really a good opportunity for us to set up the district for success while providing, comprehensive environments through updating our mechanical systems.
Yeah, I tell you, there's a whole bunch of little nuggets that I took away from that. The first being that you are aware. There's a lot of schools, unfortunately, that weren't aware and sadly made purchases based on community, anger, frustration, whatever you want to call it, where now they've got warehouses of MERV 13 filters for units that can't handle utilizing a MERV 13 filter, or hand sanitizer that's going to expire because it's got a shelf life, but everybody went into the frantic mode. You went the route of first of all, you had the condition assessment available, so you knew the life cycle. Lowest responsible bid. I love to hear that opposed to lowest bid, because all too often, and it's not the answer. It's not always the lowest bid, but in a lot of times in public sector, that's what they hear all the time. And then you start to feel that way, and it's, well, we got to take the lowest bid. And you Missouri especially, I hear lowest responsible more often than not. And the work that you did, the best practice of, hey, let's just buy directly from them. Let's go direct. Let's cut the middleman out. Let's save 30 to 40%. And that gives us a breathing room, is a great best practice that I think a lot of people may or may not take advantage of. But that's one that I haven't heard recently of doing that. But the most important bullet point that I got out of that, and all of what you say is just naturally what Salum does every day, which that's what's really cool. Which you said, we buy Daikin equipment because it does a good job, and our team, it's easy for our team to work on, and that's often overlooked. And whether it's a sales pitch, and mechanical equipment is way out of my pay grade of understanding how it all works. I'm amazed at how people can troubleshoot and figure things out. It's kind of like when you turn a switch on or off, or a thermostat on or off, there's a million things that can go wrong as to the connection of that switch or dial to the point of where you need to have that room conditioned and lit. But having that mindset of, hey, this is a great piece of equipment. It runs well. It's energy efficient. It's great. It does all this stuff. But hey, when the rubber meets the road, it's going to need work. How difficult or how easy is it? And you taking the road of, hey, we want to make this as easy for our team as possible, because we know, I'm guessing that you're probably just like everybody else, where you're having staffing issues. You don't have the staff needed to do all the work in a given day. So the more that you can do to make the work that they do easier for them to get to is imperative, and that's commendable.
Well, 100%. And again, you heard me talk earlier, a lot of the verbiage I use, it's not by accident, right? It's got to make sense for the end users, right? And in this particular case, in the context of what we're talking about, it's got to perform, right, for the students and the teachers and the educational stakeholders in the environment. But when it doesn't perform, the other end user in this particular case is our HVAC technicians, right? They've got to be able to go in there and they've got to troubleshoot the unit and fix it. And I'll be honest, not every single mechanical contractor or manufacturer provides the necessary training and the support that's necessary to be able to do that. And we found with Daikin, they do, they continually have, similar to what we do with Missouri School Plant Managers for our day conferences. They offer those, if not quarterly, every couple of months, there's a training. I send our guys to that because it's important. There's updates, there's firmware updates, right? There's all of those things that are necessary, to have that knowledge. That way they can apply it when they encounter that into the field.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. I mean, that's more need more of that. Need more of the continuous improvement, constant training. The technology is moving at such an unbelievably rapid rate. Anyone that I talk to that has a leadership role that has anything to do with technology, I say, hey, look, go on YouTube and do a search for Shift Happens. There's a video that was done in 2006 that showed the speed in which they anticipated technology to advance and get smarter. And we're talking about AI now with ChatGPT, which is scary. I don't know if you've messed around with it, but it is scary how smart and how quick it's producing simple questions. But having your team continue to learn and to grow and to understand all these new pieces that are coming to them, that box, what's inside that box is changing constantly. And I think that's great that you take that role. So what kind of going back to what was the thought on starting to put the projects and the advancements and the things that on LinkedIn out for the world? Where did that kind of come into play? Because you're one of the best. I mean, I'm not gonna toot your horn too big because the camera can only go this wide. But I make a practice to be connected with people that are in my life that impact me, i.e. my clients, my prospective clients, people in industry. And so I have thousands of people. And when I say you're one of the best, I mean, you are one of the best. That you put out great pictures, incredible detail, and there is intention with those posts, which is to showcase. And it's not all pretty and flowers. Like I talk about that auditorium, it's scary how much scaffolding and everything. You didn't show the finished product, you showed the work in progress. So what was what was kind of the light bulb moment, or what do you remember, kind of what it was that said, hey, I need to share more of this and do more posts to put out there?
Well, it's twofold, right? If you follow my posts, we've got a comprehensive school improvement plan, and within that, there's a facility arms that's specific to just facilities, right? And that's our driving document that drives much of our capital work. And so when we're in a bond cycle, or we have a capital project, or we have some opportunities to leverage funding to address capital needs, we refer to that document quite a bit. And on top of that, that document was helped formed by our community. Our community, one of the unique things that we do here, and everybody does it differently. Some will engage their design team to do condition assessments for them. We actually engage our community. So many of the projects, with the exception of probably the life cycle replacement, we get together about 40 community stakeholders made up of students, parents, board members, building principals, and we basically give them a condition, a binder that is a comprehensive tool that they can take and go visit a school site and see it for themselves and make notes, right?
Mhm.
And so we did that in this particular regard, and we collected all of those binders back and we correlated all the data, what came up the most, and they all went to every single one of our school sites. And they made their own condition assessments. And so I share that from the fact that those are kind of, if you think about it, those are my marching orders, right? We went to
Mhm.
this school and 38 of the folks that walked through those front doors saw that this did not meet our program standard or our district standard and needed to be addressed. And so they noted that in their condition assessment, right? And so we take all that data and then we work with our design team. Hey, this is what our community's telling us. Can we start working on, schematic design? So from there, we start working with the end users in those spaces. Like, let's say, I'll use auditoriums, right? Because that's
Yep.
something that I've shared. Our stakeholder community, every single one said our auditoriums at our 3 high schools did not meet today's standards in terms of program function, climate, lighting controls, all of those things.
Mhm.
So that came up 40 times. So we took that as a marching order. We need to somehow modernize these spaces. And we started working with the theater directors, building principals at each site. Hey, this came up. What would you guys like to see? Those again are the end users, right?
Mhm.
What are the limitations of these spaces? And then we go through design development and obviously get to CD, bid out the project, start the construction work. So my point in sharing that process is it's important for me to report back, right?
Mhm.
We heard you. We walk through the process in terms of the end users and the program function, the folks that are most affected or limited in this case by the space, and pictures and that progress are my way of reporting back to our community that, hey, we listened, we heard, here's what we're doing about it. Now you can see the transformative work that's taken place.
Mhm.
And you can share and celebrate that, right? Because we're all kind of accountable to our communities, whether they be our taxpayers, our students, families, right? And so that's where that's the reason and the intentional reason behind why I share what I share and when I share it, because it's sequenced and it aligns with a lot of the feedback from the condition assessments that our community did that we implemented in, right? The HVAC part, obviously that's, they don't have the necessary tools to be able to properly assess that. I use a lot of our data off of work order requests, life cycle, and that's just a piece of the puzzle that I have to make sure is prioritized, because that is, that's just as important as that sexy auditorium, right?
Right.
Because if I have an auditorium that I can't condition, it's a miserable environment.
Right.
And so I need to make sure that our community also understands that, hey, I've also got some building envelope as well as infrastructure needs from a mechanical standpoint that we have to prioritize the financial resources we have. And I can show the data because I've got my assessments on that, right? My life cycle replacement, the number of work orders that we've run. And so that's the reason, Josh, and that's kind of how we get to that.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many auditoriums I've gone to that are absolutely gorgeous that you can't sit in because they're not conditioned right, or they don't, they put all this money into, older buildings don't have air conditioning because of, what you talked about earlier, which is you have 60 days and you don't have 60 days. You've got summer camps that are coming at you. You've got band camps. You've got everybody wants to use your space. Whenever that space is not being used for curriculum, your communities and your companies around you want that space. And I've sat in auditoriums that are absolutely gorgeous, just beautiful, but there's no good controlling of it or no air conditioning because it's a 50-year-old building that's been redone, and they just didn't put that piece into it. So it's important, or it's also important to make sure that you have functioning equipment, that behind the scenes stuff. This has just been awesome, as I knew it would be. I want to give a little teaser, because I'm going to have you back on
Okay.
I'm going to have you back on in August, and you gave a little comment about the next thing, and when you leave the district. I think you were talking about those 120 units. You're leaving a legacy, and I think that's something that's important for all facility professionals, because when I started my career, you started in a district. A lot of times it was the district you went to in high school, and you
Mhm.
stayed there. You didn't need to prepare a resume. You didn't have superintendents searching you out and looking for the next opportunity. And I think it's very important that you show pride in your work until the day that you leave, and you leave it better than you showed up with. And you're leaving quite the legacy. But I'd like to ask, my closing question to you is, just how stressful is that on you, to think about all the stuff that you have going on and what you're going to leave for the next person, which is undoubtedly a better district. But you gotta be up at night thinking about, all these moving pieces, and your every day is one day closer to, your next great opportunity.
Yeah. There's a lot of variables that go into that answer, but I'll start with the kind of the legacy part, and then I'll kind of try to articulate the rest of it. Um, I don't. We're public servants, Josh, and the roles that we serve, right? And I always try to preach to our teams that it's not about me, it's not about you. Um, it's not about everybody except the mission, and the mission is to provide comprehensive facility environments for all stakeholders, right? That's that at the end of the day, when you
Mhm.
boil down what we do, that's it, right? I don't get too caught up in legacies, because I think sometimes that's self-serving, and what I always pride myself in is let the work do the talking for you. One of the things that I shared last week, I don't know if you caught it, is our district celebrates classified and certified employees of the year, right? And
Mhm.
so we've got basically 32 buildings, and then you've got some departments that are factored into that. So we held our classified employee of the year breakfast last year, and that environment is to recognize and celebrate all of the nominees that were selected by their peers, and then also select the individual that is the overall winner for the entire district. So as I indicated, I don't really care too much about legacies, but I care about the daily work that's taken place and the framework that we've set up. And at that setting, 10 of the 35 individuals that were selected to represent their building and or department came from the facility operation wing. Okay. I just
Mhm.
think about that, right? That means that we have made a significant impact to where others have recognized that individual's contributions at the local level, their building and or department, and selected them as an individual that significantly contributes to the educational process for their respective building and or department. That is what I'm proud
Yeah.
of. And so, that lets me know that all of the work that we put in since year one in this district, which is, it's a large district, 12th largest in the state, but operationally, the work that we took on when I started my tenure, those are the fruits of that labor,
Mhm.
right? And so that is at the end of the day, that's what I hang my hat on. It's kind of that carryover, I guess, if you will. As a parent, you try to teach your kids certain things, and it takes time for them to understand. But when they get it, that's probably the proudest moment you have as a parent. And I liken that situation to what I just experienced here in this district. And so, this, if you'll ask the second part of your question, because it was twofold in terms of where I'm headed, I'd be more than happy to elaborate on that piece of it as well.
Please do.
So in terms of where I'm headed, yeah, sure. This is my alma mater from, a district standpoint, the Independence. I went to school here, went away, came back, contributed. To your point, most people stay in that role until they retire, right? Or go do something completely different. I'm driven by challenges and opportunities. And the Francis Howell is a wonderful district. We started kind of having conversations about potential interest way back in, as early as November of 2022. And then obviously once the position was posted, had to go through the formal process, and it was competitive. I mean, to your point, we've got a lot of talented folks in the state of Missouri that can go in and comprehensively bring services and expertise in the areas of operations to best serve that district. So as with any process, I really started researching what that district stands for. They're academically, they're in the top 8 in the state of Missouri of, a state that's got 400 and I think it's 70 school districts, might even be a little bit more. So they've got strong academic pedigree. There was certainly opportunity for them on the operations side to grow and enhance many of the things that they were doing. And I felt, my combination of higher ed as well as public, certainly I've picked up a lot of tools along the way that can contribute to the great work that's already taken place there, and really try to, grow the operational side of the district to match the academic pedigree that they have across the state. And so, my wife, the other part of this, Josh, my wife is from the area. She grew up in the St. Louis area, and it's certainly an opportunity to have the, be closer to her family as well. And so it's a good opportunity professionally for me, but also checks the family box.
Awesome. No, you made it. You talked about, being the 8th in the best curriculum in the state. And, I was funny. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and John Dufay, who's the director of facilities. When you walk into their facilities office, on the wall, it says, to be 21st century schools, we must be a 21st century M&O department. And that's something that's very important. And in order to get to number one, you got to be number one all around. It can't just be in the curriculum focus. It's got to be in that learning environment that they're providing, because every study shows optimum learning environments, meaning clean air, safe space. We talk about those Glade plugins the teachers put in that can make a difference in respiratory. All those pieces actually play a factor in the level of education that a student can receive. So good for you. Congratulations. Look forward to the move. And I got to tell you, my past guests have all been trying to get me to go the way of the Kansas City Chiefs. As I said, I'm a Massachusetts, New England Patriots fan. They've all been, as a matter of fact, I can't remember if it was Jim or Casey. They had a big wall. Kansas City Chiefs.
It was Casey.
You've been very subtle. You've had your hands in front of your tie and occasionally put me into a trance, because I'm pretty sure you have the Kansas City Chiefs logo on your tie. And for the last 2 minutes, I'm like, is that a Kansas City Chiefs logo? What is he doing there? What's going on there? Oh, this is strange. So you've successfully got me thinking about the Kansas City Chiefs, and congratulations for the Super Bowl, that big win.
Well, funny story. I purposely wore this tie for you today.
I figured.
I kept hearing you. I think you visited with the DLR team and the Lee Summit team, and I think someone had either a poster of the Chiefs.
Yes.
And Casey had a hat or something. So I said, I've got a date with Josh. I better continue that tradition of making sure that he doesn't forget about the Chiefs.
Yeah.
In all honesty, I'm a redheaded stepchild in this area as well, because I'm a huge, huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, when they win the Super Bowl here,
Yeah.
my parking spot, I come into, I just know that there's always going to be some kind of shenanigan that the staff will put up, right? So when they won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, I came into my office, my door had a Patrick Mahomes fat head on the front.
Yeah.
All of the computer screens had Chiefs Super Bowl champions. My parking spot out front had Chiefs Super Bowl champion. And then I went to lunch, came back, and my truck had Patrick Mahomes basically wrapped around. And so it's all fun and games. You know, appreciate that my staff feels comfortable enough to really kind of, you know, tongue in cheek tease me because they know I'm a big Steelers fan. But I always still remind them, count the number of Super Bowls that the Chiefs have versus the Steelers, and when you get to this point, let's have a conversation. But they've got about 4 more to go before they can start, you know, I guess riding in that same stratosphere as the Steelers and a couple of the other teams that have multiple Super Bowl wins more than they do. So
yeah, no, absolutely. Well, thank you, because that's always good fun, and you know, like I say, I am definitely, I'm a New England Patriots fan. I'm a Tom Brady fan. So sad to see that he retired. I thought he was going to play for at least another 30 years. But you know, a good team is a good team, and there's some talent, and you saw some impressive play this year, and you saw Mahomes play through some injuries, and that was you know, hats off to him. And head coach has the greatest line of any leader that I've ever heard, which is, when the outlook is grim, be the Grim Reaper. That was just a classic in the playoff come back and forth last year, a couple of years ago. So
well, it's certainly there's a lot of positive things taking place here, and you know, I'm a big athletics guy. You know, my boys play hockey, and so I get to travel all over the country, but and enjoy their successes. But speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, they really have, they're a great organization. They're doing some really great things, and kudos to New England, because I think that model that you saw there under those general managers and Bill Belichick is really, let's be honest, that's what's replicated here. You know, you've got Mahomes, you've got a good tight end, and you surround those folks with all of those support roles, very similar to what New England did. You've got your quarterback and Tom Brady, you got Gronkowski, you surround them with key pieces, and you make runs, and I think Kansas City is poised to make runs here probably for the next 4 to 5 years with how they've drafted and the talent that they have, and the consistency in leadership too also matters.
So I didn't plan this, but you fell right into it as we're going, so I can give you credit and give the New England Patriots credit. But when I asked you about stress and keeps you up at night and leaving a legacy, you did the absolute leadership that I know you, which was looking to your team and the success of your team and recognizing them as a whole. And it was Bill Belichick in the first year that Tom Brady took the helm. And I watch this video regularly on YouTube, so you can do a search for it. But the first Super Bowl that the Patriots were in with Tom Brady, you can remember back in
the played the Rams, didn't they?
Yeah, they played the Rams. Every Super Bowl prior to the Rams game, the Super Bowl, they welcomed the individual players to the field as a welcome. And it was that Super Bowl that Bill Belichick said, my team came here as a team. They're coming out to the field as a team. And it was the first time ever that the team came out in unison, not named individually, but collectively. And that was really a defining moment, in my opinion, on how they were able to start to build that legacy of teamwork, true teamwork and success. No individuals on the team. It was collective. And that was pretty cool. So, I'd say this has been awesome, as I expected. I'm going to post that. I'm going to share that post that you put with the 10 out of 35 team members, and it was a head custodian that got the award. As I read it real quick. So we'll
Yeah,
put
it was Michael Scholhammer, and he's our head custodian / building manager at William Chrisman, which is one of our 3 high schools. And yeah, very proud of the work that we do here. It matters. It's important. And as we kind of started off at our conversation initially, I think, district leadership recognize that, and that was also kind of, putting a bow on it. That was very evident in my meetings as I was working through the candidacy process with Francis Howell. I think they recognize that comprehensive leadership in the area of operations is, an investment that they need to make. And, selfishly, I think I've got the right tools to contribute to that. And I think it ties down to, in order to really make change, you've got to recognize that you need to make a change, right? And you need to treat that position with the same dignity, integrity, approach that you would treat, any other leadership position on the academic side within your district. So excited about that. Excited to be working, a little bit behind the scenes with my future team and trying to coach and lead them as well. But all I can do is provide the framework, which are the guardrails. You'll always hear me talk about that. I'll set up the guardrails, and then we'll get our team to work within that framework to deliver comprehensive services in the areas of facilities and operations. So I'm excited about it. So.
Well, me too, and we'll do it to be continued. So we've gone way over, and I know you've got work to do. So we'll do chapter 2. But thank you for wearing the tie. That made my day, and sharing so much with us, my friend.
Okay. Well, I appreciate the work that you do too. I think as Charlie's probably shared with you, and as I've kind of, Charlie started talking with me and others on the board about podcasts, and at first I was like, okay, but the more and more that I travel a lot, right, with my kids for hockey, and I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts, and I've listened to every single one that you've put out. I think they're great. There's been key takeaways from every single one that I can take and implement into my role here, and I have, and my future role with Francis Howell. So it's most certainly a need in the operations side. I think many of the podcasts that you hear out there are about academics and leadership and those things, but the opportunity to visit with you and you providing that platform for us to share the great work that supports all of those other functions in a school system is sometimes underlooked and underserved. And I think I truly appreciate you for taking on this and giving us a platform to share the great things that we're doing in the state of Missouri.
It's my honor, and this has been the fastest growing, even though we've only done 8 episodes, and we're doing it the right way. We're getting the guests that we're patient with our guests, getting them on, and if it takes a little bit longer to launch or whatever, that's okay. And in turn, it's been a great product. I mean, we've done it collectively. There's been a couple thousand downloads, which is highly targeted in that area. And what's really nice is, I'll get a call from someone. They'll say, hey, I had someone in my district that didn't really know a lot about what I did. And I share the podcast with them, and they listen to it. And it's this outside person. It's me, asking inquisitive questions from Massachusetts or Wisconsin or wherever I'm at that are really, they're questions that I think your stakeholders and taxpayers and clients, students, parents, everybody, that they should be asking, or that they'd like to ask, and providing those answers without having to have an argument or anything else, and really bringing that awareness to the forefront. So I appreciate the kind words and you listening and joining us. And you're going to be on again already. I've already booked you again. So there you go.
All right. Well, sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. And thank you again, and have a great rest of your week, and we'll be in touch.
Appreciate you, my friend. And And that'll do it for another episode here. This was another doozy. Just can't thank everyone enough. As I shared, we've had a couple thousand downloads. We really, if we deserve your 5-star rating and review, please, on the podcast platform of your choice, go ahead and hit that 5-star rating and review. The ratings and reviews, the downloads, listens on the podcast platforms is what gets us a rating. There's roughly 3.6 million podcast channels. And we want to get ourselves in that top 10% ranking as quickly as possible, and hopefully get to that top 1%, because this is some really exciting and incredible content that we're sharing, not just for the great folks in Missouri, but there's takeaways that any school district USA can take away from this, to give hope and optimism and planning and go into that next step. So if we haven't earned it, reach out to me, josh@beawesome.com. That's BEAUSM as in Mary.com. It's Josh. Let me know what we can do, how we can improve, or maybe you want to be a guest, and that's what'll get us that 5-star rating and review from you. But be sure to reach out to us. And in the meantime, have an awesome day, and we'll see you in the next episode.